If you're listening on podcast, be sure to tune in to our YouTube channel on YouTube at Wild and Weird WV.
Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast. Welcome back to Wild and Weird Radio, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another installment here. And we've got a really fun episode for you. But before we go any further than that, remember, if you're watching on YouTube, go over and hit the subscribe button and like the video too. That always helps us out greatly. And hit the notification bell because you're going to be notified of our lives that we go on, and you're going to be notified of all of the excursions that we film when we go out as well. Because we do post a lot of our investigations, and we try to post as much information and data as possible. And again, like I said, catch our live show every Thursday at around 8 o'clock. We're going to be kicking that off. We're going to be on episode 4 this week. You guys wanted it. We're giving it to you. We've had great shows the last few weeks, haven't we all?
Wait now. We're recording ahead of time, so do time travel with me. By the time you see this, we'll be on episode 5 coming up.
We will be on episode 5 by the time you see this. You're right.
Yeah,
episode 5 will have aired yesterday by the time you're listening to this, if you listen to us on Friday in audio. And this week's episode is
pretty,
as many of you probably guessed, if you followed the show for any amount of time, we're covering the recent UFO phenomena that has been just blowing up. Is this a UFO invasion? Is this some kind of a ruse? What is going on? Well, we're going to talk about it. We're going to give you our honest opinion. And quite frankly, we're only going to give you the data. So we're not going to try to sway anybody's opinions one way or the other. We're just going to give you the data and let you make up your mind for yourself.
Now, you guys can ask questions, and by all means, we can speculate, but we don't have any true answers. Just to make that clear. Not yet. At the time of what we're recording right now, and probably by the time that we actually go live, we still won't have any answers. But it's a fascinating story, and there's a huge timeline there. And I just think that it's going to be a really good show. And again, by the time you see this, that will have already aired. So just go over and check the live tab on the YouTube channel and rewatch the whole thing. And by all means, let us know what you think.
I'm thinking about getting my tinfoil hat ready for that episode.
I think we all should. We should start the live wearing tinfoil hats.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a possibility, right? There are those who are actually going out there. I don't know. I mean, it's probably worth a try,
right?
I mean, if we are getting invaded, what could it hurt?
Oh, I wasn't talking about the invasion, Brandon. That's not. I'm talking about all the crazy
people. The only
people.
problem is like we've discovered recently that a lot of this activity revolves around having exposure to radiation.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of what happens to aluminum foil when it's in a microwave.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to have that on my head if a UFO is coming around to anything.
At least you would go out quickly.
Yeah, it'd be like a human baked potato.
I don't honestly think it's the UFOs we have to worry about with this.
Right?
Yeah, I think
all right, guys. Let's go ahead. We're going to hit the news desk. We've got a couple interesting articles, and because this week's live episode is going to be very, very news heavy, we are going to have you guys go check that one for all the UFO news. This episode is going to be pretty UFO news free.
We won't have anything to say that wasn't said. Let's just put it that way at this point. Unless we can see the future. Anybody want to make a prediction? We can do that. We've done it so far.
We're going to shoot down 2 more, and they're going to say they can't find it.
Go back and watch the episodes. I'm pretty sure.
Remember my predictions? I said it was going to be about 6 weeks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've all said that. I think the last episode, I said, it's going to be next week's going to be a really big UFO week. I had no idea. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Don't come knocking on my door and thinking I'm some
from our prediction episode. We are setting right at 6 weeks this week. So like I should have played the lottery.
Yeah, probably. But anyway, that just shows that you know how to read patterns, and that's what everyone needs to learn how to do is read patterns, and it'll be a much more interesting world for them. Anyway, let's see. We have something here called what do I call it? The news desk. Isn't that what it's called? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That may never get old.
I don't think it ever will. It's always going to be fun.
Yeah.
So last week, those of you guys who follow us week to week, you know that we did tackle a Bigfoot photograph that had been floating around.
Oh yeah,
and and as we had good suspicions, that it was a image from most likely a documentary or a movie, because the production, the quality of the photo was really good.
It was good,
as well as the suit. And we did say that it did look like a very well made suit. And I was open to the fact that it might have been real. And I told you guys about how pinning worked and all that. Well, this suit was pinned. Somebody actually did set and pin this outfit, and it was for a French documentary about Australopithecines, no less, early hominids.
Yeah, which is exactly what we pretty much had said, that this was going to be a documentary of some sort, which makes perfect sense. I mean, that's an incredible suit.
Also looked too clean.
Yeah, it looked really super clean. Like there was no matting. Everything was.
I don't know the bathing habits of the North American.
Maybe there's Bigfoot mutation.
Right, there could be.
We've proven other primates do have a cleaning ritual. It helps with developing.
For real, that's what I'm getting at. Have you ever looked at a gorilla's fur? I mean, it's really
it's part of the communal bonding aspect. Yeah. They sit and prune and clean each other.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say that Bigfoots don't clean themselves like that. I mean, look at a cat.
It's possible. It's possible.
Dog, all these things.
I mean, they could look like people. I mean, have you ever seen some of those survivalists that live out in the middle of nowhere?
It's true.
That is true.
Like that. They could look like that. They could look like that. They could look like, dirty hippies from the 60s. I don't know what they look like, honestly, but, I mean, from what I hear, some of the ones that smell could look like the dirty hippies from the 60s. So, yeah.
Yep.
Well, the Australopithecines had hit the news twice, apparently, this week, at least on our side, just because we were talking about the documentary. But they've also attributed the old site that was found, that made the news a few weeks ago, that axe making factory that they were talking about, that was millions and millions of years older than recorded history that we had, and what we had thought that hominins were capable of making these stones. Come to find out, Australopithecines are what they're attributing this to, that they might have been the ones that were using those tools. Pretty interesting. Yeah, especially because this specific Australopithecine is the one that Meldrum and Cliff Barrickman and several others, which is the Paranthropus robustus, might actually be a relative of Sasquatch.
Which, that's one of the theories, that it's a sort of missing link kind of thing that you're dealing with. And,
when you look at the reconstructions of these guys and you compare those notes to some Bigfoot reports, I mean, it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm. I've wondered for a while if like some of these tools that we find in the woods are actually, made by Bigfoot, possibly.
It's possible. Looking at some of these things that come across, obviously you got your stick structures and whatnot. Those are most likely either nature or human related, but some of these more primitive stone pieces that look like they've been napped, but they're not napped as clean as, say, something that you would expect from modern humans. It's possible they might just not be like accidental workings. They might have been purposefully made that way. All right. So next up on the news desk is we actually had a sighting report that was sent in to us.
Which one?
This one was sent in. This was a Bigfoot sighting that was sent in. It was, oh gosh, it was 4 or 5 days ago. And the witness actually just got back with me today to give me some more particulars about the sighting and where it took place, like the general proximity. And it goes like this. It was in the September of 2016, and I was walking home from the bus after school. I had a long driveway with trees along both sides, and I lived in the middle of the woods on the Jackson and Kanawha County line. I was singing with my headphones in when all of a sudden I saw movement in the trees ahead of me. I paused my music, and I heard lots of leaves and sticks crunching and rustling about. Then I saw about a 7-foot creature stepping out from the trees, and it was very fuzzy and hairy and had long brownish blackish hair. As soon as I saw it, I took off running, so I didn't get to see any other definitions, so no face or anything like that. So I asked the witness about the time of year and more particulars about that. And wouldn't you know, this took place in September, October timeframe. And it was during a warm fall, clear day. And that sighting came in, and it is roughly from it's in between Sissonville and Goldtown.
Okay.
So I found that one pretty interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. Because I don't remember, growing up out there, I don't remember hearing really any Bigfoot accounts of.
Yeah, because that was right there in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Probably because people just don't talk about it.
I mean, I heard Bigfoot accounts from other places, but I never heard any from around our local area. We just had our typical other weird things going on out there. But
yeah, this witness lived near the old state route that runs from Sissonville area over into Roane County, like towards Clay County, like the county route.
I kind of wonder if people hear weird stuff in the woods and they just convince themselves that it's bear or deer, even though it obviously sounds like it's something on 2 feet.
Sometimes it is, that.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes it is. More times it is going to be a bear or even a squirrel for that matter. I mean, squirrels sound like they weigh 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, they sound like a boulder coming down a mountain.
They really do, especially, and it's even worse if you get two of them that are fighting. Oh my gosh, it sounds like a bomb's going off. Especially during really, really dry fall when all the leaves are down, it's
rolling around. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
One time I was sitting waiting for deer, and 2 squirrels got into a fight in a tree across from me, and I watched one shove the other one out of the tree. Like this Sparta shoved him, and he fell out and died.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh man. Squirrels are brutal.
Well, do we have anything else that we're not going to cover in the live for the news? I think that about sums it up.
Yeah, because everything else was pretty much UFO heavy this week. And again, just head over to to watch it, because we've already done it by now, and be a part of the conversation next week on the next live.
What about the Bigfoot article from Channel 13?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Bigfoot.
So Channel 13 posted an article about Bigfoot, which surprised all of us. They basically went on the BFRO and collected some sightings that they thought were interesting. But to me, it says a lot that they actually, went through the trouble of doing this about Bigfoot. That was pretty surprising.
It was really interesting because it wasn't part of any other kind of promotion. In previous years, they've ran these articles and they revolved around, them having success with an interview that they had done for some kind of an event. And so then they'll run a Bigfoot piece and to just generate traffic. But this was just out of the blue.
Yep.
It was interesting. Very interesting.
Makes me wonder why.
Of course, they didn't talk to anyone that they should have talked to.
Right.
Let's let's not give them accolades here. It's wonderful that they tackled the subject, and they tackled it in a
Right.
really good way. And I get it. They thought that, they were talking to the MUFON of the Bigfoot community, and they kind of are. BFRO is, they are who they are. They've done a lot of work. They deserve the credit, but
Yep.
there are very few boots on ground in our actual state.
Yeah, we've only got 3 in our state, and
Exactly.
they didn't technically 4 if
No.
you count me. Matt Moneymaker wants to count me, but I'm like
Right,
I'm an
right.
independent Matt, and
Right.
but the there's only 3, and they didn't contact any of them.
Right. That would be what I'm getting at. And it would have been a much more interesting article had they reached out to those individuals. I'm not even talking about us. If they'd reached out to just the other individuals, that would have been a much more
And
interesting.
what makes matters worse too is the station that ran this. They're literally in Russ Jones's backyard.
Right.
Yep.
He is literally a phone call away. His office is less than 10 minutes from the headquarters for this news agency.
I think it's just a matter of they wanted to do a good story.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like sometimes when we do the news, you just hit Google and you just say, you ask your friends and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this piece and I need to know. And they're like, oh, well, here's the best website, out there.
Right.
Yeah, it is. I agree. And they have some incredible cases. They didn't know, or they probably didn't have time to do that big in-depth article, interview that they should have. But boy, I'm just saying, if they would have,
that would have been so much better. Even if they'd have just got a hold of Russ, just done one interview and ran, it'd have been great.
It would have been great just because of the content that they would have got, and it generated a lot more feasibility and a lot more interest in the subject, I believe.
And speaking of Russ Jones, he's also got a relatively newer podcast called Wide Open Research. It's a Bigfoot podcast, and it's a great show. And they have some great guests on. You guys, if you're listening to our show, you will definitely enjoy Wide Open. It's fun. It's a good time. I tune in whenever they do their shows live. It's live and recorded, and but they do a great job.
I think my favorite episode I've seen so far, they had a lady who does illustrations for the BFRO, where she does witness drawing. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was a really good episode. She's actually who I dealt with for the longest time down at the Expedition Bigfoot. She worked there at the museum for a good bit with Dave Bacara. And she sold her artwork there, but she's the only one that had the patience to deal with me over the phone, because they don't do online sales there. But she would deal with me, and she'd ship me my t-shirts.
That's hilarious. Well, I do believe that's going to probably wrap up our news. Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so very strange subject today, right?
Yeah, it is. It's
a little out there.
It's one that we've never tackled before.
Right.
It's been kind of a long time coming to get to this one, but it's also one of those topics where, like, all right, we're almost 150 shows deep. We got to start getting some, good topics that we haven't touched before, and this is just one of them. And of course, tonight is giant turtles and other strange aquatic cryptids.
Yes, that's going to be interesting. Some of these stories are very interesting, and some of these stories actually happened in our backyard. So
yeah, oddly enough, West Virginia is one of these places that technically one, but 2 names are attributed to this creature, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But there's been giant turtles all over the world, right? There's giant turtle lore. There's there's various tribes and cultures of people that believe that we're riding on the back
of a giant turtle.
Exactly.
Yep, that's right.
And that's where we are in the world. And so you can see where these stories have their place in this mythological aspect, but then they're rooted in a form of reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first we're gonna introduce you guys first off to a creature named the Beast of Busco. And he's out there in our good buddy Jeff Byers' backyard. It's an Indiana cryptid, and it's a giant snapping turtle.
It is a
right?
giant snapping turtle. Yeah, absolutely.
And citizens claim to have seen back starting in 1949 in that area. And the problem is, they did a month-long hunt for this creature, and it got national attention, but the beast was never found, right? But there's sighting reports of these massive turtles in Indiana in the rivers there that date back all the way into the 1800s. So you can't just ignore these. And when we look into the fossil record, we also see these larger than what we have now snapping turtles. And you can see where if some of these people found one, that they would assume this is some kind of a monster. Like if there was a remnant, the last of its kind species sort of deal, or last of its species in that region, it wouldn't be unheard of that this would be dubbed a cryptid, right?
Well, yeah, technically it would be a cryptid. I mean, and particularly the one you're talking about in Indiana, it's fascinating just because of the lengths that people went to try to even validate this thing. Just unbelievable.
So
those legends sort of remind me of the coelacanth, because fishermen were reporting for years they were catching these things, but nobody believed them until scientifically they hauled one in and examined it.
When you go to the lengths of
once they started investigating that, they found out that they weren't just not extinct, but they were thriving.
Once you go to the lengths of actually draining a pond,
catch them all the time now
to prove this, though, that's the
right. That's true. They did drain a rather large pond to try to find it. But anybody who knows snapping turtles knows that they're migratory species. They don't stay in one body of water their entire life. They'll move. Like I have found snapping turtles up on top of the ridges of mountains. It's not unheard of. They'll go from vernal pool to creek, then start hiking back up the mountain. They'll just move all around that little forest area. And they probably won't go too far beyond that till they hit a creek, and then they'll just navigate wherever. But yeah, I've seen these animals up on the ridge tops of mountains, a snapping turtle of all things.
I've found many box turtles up in the woods before.
Yes,
lots of them.
We've all found. I've found snappers in weird places. They don't necessarily be there, but and I've seen really large snappers too. That's the thing. But we're talking about a 300-pound snapping turtle.
Right.
We're talking about something that that's what this thing was estimated at, and maybe. I mean,
300-pound snapping turtles aren't.
That's doable.
That's not out of the realm of possibility, because the alligator snapping turtle, that's normal. You go down to Florida, down in the bayou, you're going to find a 250, 300-pound snapping turtle, and it's going to have musket balls stuck in its shell from the Civil War.
Yeah, and that's real. They do, but and that's one of the things about this one is that they said that it's absolutely possible that it was an alligator snapping turtle. It's out of its range, but they also figured out that back in the day, some of these people, these salesmen that traveled through, they would come through and they would have turtles with them.
Yeah.
And I mean, because they made good meals. So they were traveling with these turtles. And so they let some of these turtles loose sometimes.
They would. Yeah. They would take species, and it was really common. It technically considered invasive species because it's outside of its native range.
Yeah.
But they could, as long as the conditions aren't terrible there and it's not getting extremely cold, and Indiana isn't necessarily known for its frigid winters. I mean, they're similar to us in that they're only about 3.5 hours from West Virginia.
Yes.
And their winters aren't known for being blizzard, so it's possible that one of these traveling salesmen did bring some of these guys up and dumped them in ponds.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely possible. We know it happens because, back where we used to work the pet shop down there at Ridenour Lake, they were catching
and
goldfish and cichlids. They got cichlids in
they
there.
did.
I've heard stories of in other places that I'm catching pacus. Now these are
Yeah.
non-native, and you know where they came from. They came from people who had them in their tanks and they turned them loose.
Right. And
I can remember.
with
I was just going to say I've been in this creek by my cousin's house catching crawdads for fishing bait and found aquarium fish swimming around in the creeks.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely, it does happen. And that was one of the big pushes on the invasive animal legislation that we beat back that one year and helped defeat. So
Yeah.
that's one of the premises of it, is in these invasive species. So could it have been an invasive species? Yes, that absolutely.
And they would have grown to huge size because there's no native predator for it.
Right.
And there's no competition.
It's like the snakes in Florida.
Good. Sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. No, yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, as far as it goes, we could say that the beast of Busco could have been a invasive species.
Yeah, and I mean, they went as far as to actually name the thing. They nicknamed the beast Oscar after the original owner of the farm.
Oscar.
And they made multiple attempts to try to catch this thing, try to find it, and they
had divers. They had people.
Yep.
It sounded almost like when you were looking for the Mothman, didn't it?
That or like Loch Ness.
Loch Ness. Yeah. Because they said they had the parties that would arrive and they would be looking for this thing.
Yeah.
And they got so many people near the lake that they had to close the road. They were afraid that a section of the road was going to actually cave in at one point. I mean, that's insane.
Gosh,
it is.
So something was there.
Something was there, absolutely, and I think it very well could have been a massive snapper, and it just got up and left the pond, moved to another body of water. Because these things aren't stupid either; they can sense when the weather's changing. Well, it might have known here comes a harsher winter because it's reading the barometric pressures, and it was like, I need to get into the water and move south to a warmer area.
Well, they also drained the pond, and as well as I do what these things look like when they're in a mud puddle. You don't see them.
You don't. They're mud rocks. They look like massive rock.
Exactly. And unless they were going down there and actually looking, and I don't think they were. Yeah. Let's be real, because
you're dealing with knee-deep silt at that point too.
Exactly. No. So I don't think that they would have ever found the little guy, the big guy, And I think when the pond was filled back up, there's a good chance he lived the rest of his life out, and that was it.
That is a good analysis of that. Like, because I'd always thought the migratory route, but what you just said, and thinking about how much muck would have been, how much detritus would have been at the bottom of that pond.
Yeah,
you could easily had a 800-pound turtle in that. You never know.
Easily, and we know for a fact, we've seen this, been in the trade, that we saw people who took their tanks down and set tanks out almost dry. And there were plecos that lived. Yeah. After a week, just because there was some little silt down in the bottom, of the gravel that was remaining. And we saw that. We actually rescued one at one time for that.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and it was about he's about like a 7-8 inch plecostomus. And, there's the algae eaters, little guys, they only get this big. No, they don't. They get this big.
Some of them get 3 feet long.
Yeah, they get big. But so when they get bigger,
I found those in creeks before.
Well, here's the point. When they get bigger, they actually are one of the hardiest species that you're going to find. They're tanks. They are absolute tanks.
Yeah. And in warm water, that they'll die in northern winters, but in the south they've invaded rivers, and
they won't live here. They will not live here, but you will definitely see those things survive in silt, and they can easily survive in a tank that's been set outside that someone's taken down. And you find that fish, it may look dead to you. You put water on that thing's alive.
And
so
then
I could see
with the silt being in the bottom of that pond and the turtle being down there, their natural defense is like freeze.
Yep.
Don't move.
They're not going to move. Yeah.
And somebody could have walked through, even if they did walk down there, they could have stepped right on it and it wouldn't have moved.
Nope. The only time it's going to do that is if it was starving.
Yep.
And
it's a little bit like Bigfoot.
Well, it would also had to been in water because it'll be in this terrified mode at this point. It's in
Right.
survival mode.
It would have been
not moving.
scared. It would have
Yeah.
hunkered into the shell. Everything had been drawn in.
Duck and cover, literally.
Yep. So Beast of Busco gets a definite plausible from us, guys.
Oh, 100% plausible.
And that's not just because we like cryptids and stuff. This is we have a background. Like I've been a reptile nut since I was little. Ron has been into reptiles for a really long time too. And turtles specifically are one of my favorite things. It was the very first creatures that I kept, and I have a fascination with turtles. Really cool. So I'm stoked to be able to say that the Beast of Busco very well could have been a large alligator snapper that had just been wonky and gotten into an area it didn't need to be in.
Well, let's also talk about this. Some of these other ones, because that's the Beast of Busco, right?
Yeah.
So that. And we're saying, yeah, absolutely. We get that. That gets our stamp of approval. Now, some of these other ones, we're talking about creatures that are over 400 and up pounds.
Yes.
Able to take deer down.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, that sounds like fantasy, right? But then I'm also thinking, I mean, we still see people today who are almost 7.5 feet tall. It's rare, but they're there. The gigantism is a real thing.
It is.
Mm-hmm. So could we have some holdbacks from those ancient genes, of those giant turtles that once, ran amok on planet Earth, so to speak?
Well, it's not unheard of. There's currently the world record alligator snapper, I believe, is a 700-pound snapper named Titan that lives in a Japanese aquarium.
God.
And he's a North American alligator snapping turtle, but he was taken there and he's just been essentially he was power fed, I believe.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
And he's just huge. And you can go watch videos of people and they're beside the glass and this thing looks like a dinosaur.
They're massive.
Like you have a human beside this thing and it's bigger than the human,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They did first show up in the Cretaceous period, didn't they?
Yes, snapping turtles did first start showing up in the Cretaceous period, and there were some massive marine turtles, like the Archelon.
Mm-hmm.
That was gigantic. I mean, all three of us could fit on its back.
Archelon was an incredible species. We actually saw the shells of the fossil shell of an Archelon, and just to stand beside that, is absolutely just blows your mind.
And the one we got to stand beside wasn't even an adult.
No, it was not.
It was a juvenile, and it was still bigger than we were.
Yeah, these things were massive. So this is that thing. We know there were megafauna at one time.
Yeah.
And why not? I mean, could there have been a holdover? I think if there's going to be a holdover, it's going to be a reptile of some sort.
Oh, absolutely agree.
And I think that you've got turtles, and I think they're the perfect holdout. How long can a Galapagos live? For example, it's a land turtle, but still, how long can a Galapagos turtle live, Joe?
I'll give you an exact. I don't want to give you a wrong date. I'm going to give you an exact date real quick.
Give me the exact date on that, because I know it's ridiculous. So if we're looking at something that is even older than that strain, so to speak, if we're looking at something that isn't truly ancient, then
right now it says their average lifespan is around 150 years.
Right.
But some of them have been estimated to be 400 to 500 years old.
Right. Exactly.
And these are land turtles. The aquatic turtles can actually live longer.
So it's not without reason to think that we could have had something that could have been around here, when the settlers came in, or when the natives came in, more appropriately, when the natives came in, and they could have seen these monsters, literal monsters in the waters, and that could be some of the legends,
Which we briefly did address that in the Water Panthers episode that we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but. Here coming back, we're going to move back east a little bit because that's where the next big turtle here in North America is. And then after that, it gets weird. So the Ogwa and Mononge, they're the same creature. It's a giant snapping turtle that's said to inhabit the Monongahela River and the tributaries thereof. And recently, oddly enough, there was a sighting that came in.
That's right. It was video.
And
of it,
there were some fishermen that spotted this river monster on the West Fork River, which is part of the Monongahela River, or it's a branch. It's the West Fork of the Mon. But so I'm going to read the article to you real quick. It was a typical Friday night in the summer of 2019. And the water was high and the sky was dark. The only light came from the moon and their headlamps. This is like reading very poetically. You can tell that the person who wrote this is like really, really trying to get you in the mood. Now, here's the quote from Nate. It was pretty clear night, so we had a good light from the moon. At first, when I looked over, you could see something was intruding the flow of the water. So as you could see the flow of the water was moving, something was causing it to kind of part ways. So you see the water was going around this big rock. And what I saw looked like it was in a circle. It was big. So I just thought it was, a big ball of some sort. And the whole incident lasted less than 10 minutes altogether. And he says, I didn't really give it much thought. And then as it kept swimming, I looked back and I could see what looked like a snake. And it had this snake-like movement somewhere behind this ball. So now, I'm going through my head. I'm trying to think, what am I seeing right now? And then I realized it's all one thing. This is all connected. It's some big creature of some sort. It looked like someone was swimming on their hands and knees, crawling across the rocks. And that thing that was moving like a snake was its tail. Maybe thought maybe that a bum fell in the water, and they're like, let's go save him. And then when we were sitting there yelling and this black shadow came crawling up the rocks, we realized it wasn't looking or even acknowledging us at this point. We're like, oh my gosh, that's a big fish or a muskie stuck on the rocks. And we realized it was actually swimming upstream. And I don't know of any kind of fish that would swim on the surface of the water with that much of its body exposed as fast as it was swimming upstream. There was this mad dash trying to get some kind of light on. So we were all set up right there standing. And then probably in the window of about 20 seconds, we tried to jump into the vehicle and turn it around so that we would get the headlights on the river. But by the time we got everything situated, we didn't have any good light on the river. It was gone. So this is recent. It's just 3 years ago. And they seen this giant snapping turtle in the river.
Yeah.
And it goes back much farther than that. It goes back to the time when West Virginia wasn't quite a state yet. And we had people who were moving westward from the coast during expansion. And essentially it was an alligator snapping turtle like creature. And it's estimated to have actually been around 20 feet long and around 500 pounds. Now
20 feet long.
Yeah, that was the estimate. Now, to me, a 20-foot long turtle, just knowing turtles the way I do, a 20-foot long turtle is probably going to weigh somewhere to the tune of around 5,000 pounds.
So you have a turtle that's about a ton, is what you're saying.
Roughly.
Over a ton.
Over a ton. Because So now I'm just going to say this: the length of this creature is probably being exaggerated. Not on purpose,
a little bit,
because you know how when a creature like the guys who witnessed it moving upstream, it creates a wake.
Yes.
So that wake was probably counted in the length of the creature. That's just my assumption.
Guarantee it.
Now, the Ogla's origins are said to be from prehistoric times, which I tend to agree because the description of it sounds a whole lot like the Pleistocene snapping turtle.
Mm-hmm.
It was first reported in 1745, and according to legend, a 12-year-old boy was pulled underwater while fishing with his family, and the boy was never seen again. There was another report where a young boy had been out with a group of sheep and was on the edge of the water and witnessed this big turtle lunge from the bank of the river and snag one of the sheep and drag it into the water and eat it. And it was right in that same area. Wow. But you've got something here clearly big enough to take a small kid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's
Yeah, easily.
Terrifying.
It's very possible, especially if we were just talking about it. If this was a holdover, if this was a creature that could have been from leftover from a extinct species that we thought may have gone extinct much earlier than it had, but could a remnant still be alive, a 500-year-old animal or 350 400-year-old animal that was still hanging around here, last of its kind sort of deal, and is discovered in a otherwise pristine environment because the expansion had just been occurring coming east or west rather, and settlers hadn't really made their way into West Virginia that well. There was only the southernmost part of the state that bordered Virginia that had been settled, and the interior and northern portions were too rugged, and they used it as pass-through territory.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, this seems like some kind of a creature that was a holdover from the Ice Age.
Yeah, absolutely could be a holdover.
Now,
I think so.
The Monongi is a little different because some stories kind of mix these up a bit, but one of these reports is a two-headed giant snapping turtle.
It's just weird.
Which is just weird. It's not uncommon though. We've been in the pet trade for how long, Ron? Yes. How many two-headed aquatic turtles have we seen in our
more career? Than you would think.
Yeah.
Many more than you would think. Yeah.
Many more.
It's weird, but it's plausible and it does happen.
Wow.
And these animals generally thrive into adulthood because they don't normally have it's basically two brains, two heads, but they share all the same organs.
So it's definitely possible that you could have a two-headed reptile or amphibian or, so forth and so on. I mean, it's the same thing. This does happen.
It does.
But it does seem
to happens more often than we think, especially when breeding populations start to get reduced. Or if the breeding pool becomes too
saturated.
Shallow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You might have a large breeding populace, but the pool's kind of shallow, if you get what I mean. You start getting mutations.
Yeah. And that's one of the more common mutations. That and albinism.
Yep. Albinism and two-headed or conjoined. Now the conjoined is where things get bad. Normally the conjoined animals, reptiles don't make it.
But a two-headed definitely can.
Absolutely. Then we start getting into some more weird territory. And Brandon, you're all about the kaiju, and clearly as what's behind you, and a fan because like myself, a fan of the yokai, the little Japanese monsters and whatnot. There and spirits and demons. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about our next one?
So if you have ever played Pokemon, you've actually seen a version of a Kappa. There's a Pokemon called Golduck that's actually based on one of the versions of Kappa, where it's like human height and it has webbed fingers and toes. That's what the most popular variation of Kappa look like, but they can really vary. Sometimes they're like 4 feet tall and they have like long hairish like stuff going over their face. Most legends say they're pretty mischievous. They'll pull people in the water. They'll challenge you to a wrestling match. Stuff like that. One thing that a lot of the legends have in common is that they say that they really love cucumbers for some reason.
Yeah.
But yet,
well, I mean, if you what's really interesting is aquatic turtles go to town on cucumbers.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but they do.
Yeah, a lot of fish do. Oh yeah.
But some versions of Kappa, they say they're obsessed with manners to the point where if you do anything rude to them, it'll scare them off. Like if you burp, fart, or something like that, it'll scare them off. And there's actually a
Good to
cute
know.
little
That's my
old
favorite kind of cryptid.
drawing
The
of
kind of
him
cryptid
on
that you can
that.
fart to run off.
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
Oh, and the description of them all say that they will. How can I say this without being too graphic? They will pull an imaginary or through your anus for some reason. The legend doesn't really say why, but
Pull
Now,
an
what-
imaginary what?
Yeah, your audio broke up. They'll pull what from your anus?
it's an imaginary organ that's part of Japanese mythology. What was the word? I'm trying to find it.
I don't
real
know,
quick.
but this has got to be a magical thing. So
It
It's
is.
called a
This is like,
shirikodama.
okay. What's this organ do?
yeah,
Allegedly,
I can find it real quick. I forgot to look that up.
there's got to.
Well, apparently they've turned it into an anime creature too.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be honest, my personal favorite Kappa variation is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I never thought of it.
I'm a huge fan. I've got a good collection back here. The best Kappa ever.
But yeah, there's variations of that all across Asia too. China has a version, the Philippines have a version, Thailand has a version. But yeah, the kappa is a very common little creature, and there's people in Japan who wholeheartedly believe these things exist, especially
They do,
fishermen.
and they do these rituals around their home. They'll leave things out for them. I mean, I'd leave something out for them too if I was afraid something was going to come steal my butthole. But I mean, that's just me. Like, don't get me, guys. here's your dashi. Enjoy.
just something wrong with this.
Your dashi and cucumbers. Here you go, guys. We're keeping good relations.
There's a yokai who specifically just steals your clothes off the clothesline. Like that's all it does.
That is brilliant.
What a boring life.
I mean, like
Right.
here's the funny thing though. Like the number
Right after
one
life.
defense against the kappa is farting at it. And not just like actual farting, like if you actually you have to drop trowel, like moon it and fart at the same time, but you also have to take into consideration this creature's number one attack is taking an organ and pulling it from your butthole.
I think that is probably a clever ploy that the
Right, you're
kappa
setting
have
yourself up. This
used.
like I bet the kappa is who told everybody this is our weakness.
This is our
We're gonna
weakness,
steal all their
y'all.
buttholes.
So
I'm not even sure how I feel about this story.
I did
This
a
is
quick
great.
Google
I love it.
search.
Oh, I bet
And
this will be good.
shirikodama is the yellow ball that says it resides in your anus, and if you remove it, it just causes slight discomfort.
I'm just not even going to have this conversation anymore.
It doesn't say it has any use.
No comment. That's just wrong.
So have I actually have, I don't know if this was a giant cryptid, but I've actually when I lived in the South had a larger than average turtle experience myself. I was on a jet ski on a river that was a tributary into the Gulf of Mexico, and I was going near one of the banks, and I was just I was putting slow because I'm out there. I'm on the jet ski, but we were also like in manatee territory, so I'm not like revving it. I'm just kind of put going. I want to make sure I'm not going to thump one or anything like that. So because we weren't really out joyriding, we were just on the jet skis because they were easy to get up and down the river right through there, and we were just kind of using them at minimum speeds. And we'd go up there, we'd see alligators, we'd see big turtles, things like that all the time. And mine wasn't actually a snapping turtle of any kind. I saw a gigantic soft-shelled turtle.
Oh, I've seen those.
And absolutely gigantic. It was wider than the jet ski.
They're huge, man.
Yeah, and it stayed up on the surface. It had its head under. It was like digging through. It was really in really shallow water. It was maybe in 8 inches of water. And the reason I know it was bigger than jet ski is because it finally poked its head up and saw us, and it spooked it, and it darted, and it went under the jet ski. And at the same time, like when I looked down, I was standing up on the jet ski at this point. And when I looked down, I could still see part of it on one side as I could see the other on the other side as it swam underneath me. And it was just a monster of a turtle. I'd never seen.
They're huge.
I've never seen a soft shell that big.
They're monsters. They are massive. Those things, probably the biggest one I ever seen. If I had to guess, because I've seen a few, but the biggest one I think I've ever seen was probably about 2.5 feet, something like that, around.
Yeah,
which is pretty big, you know.
Yeah, I mean, adult size is estimated for 3 feet around for those.
They're
guys.
monsters. They're amazing because their necks are their necks are like that long.
Oh yeah, 3 foot adult, like its neck is going to be almost 4 feet long.
Yeah. It was amazing. It's like a snake.
Yeah.
You know, but it was an impressive creature. I can't imagine anything as big as what you saw. But
it was gigantic. Like I swear the head on it was like that big around, and they're not supposed to be that big here. But Asia, they do have an Asian giant soft shell turtle that's nearly extinct. It's heavily threatened. They thought that it was extinct, but then they found 2 of them. And those were out on the Ganges, I believe. The Ganges and the what's the other river? It's another one of the rivers that runs all the way through, the east. That one runs through China. The Ganges runs through India, and they've got this massive soft shell turtle. But the one in China is just freaking gigantic. It's so big. But this resembled that in its mass, like the size of the head and everything. And remind you, the one in China's head is like that big around. The one I saw was like that big around. Still, just seeing that in person was insane.
I mean, there's monstrous aquatic species out there. That's what people don't get. They are out there, and they're not always just, turtles. I mean, there's monster catfish. I remember, my uncle, they used to grovel. They call it noodling, I think is another name for that, where you go and you put your arm under the rock and, you hope the thing bites you and then you drag it out. Well, some of these things are so big. There's people who've drowned that way. My uncle almost drowned doing that.
There's also the tales from the rivers here about people who work for the power companies who've gone down in the water near the locks and dams, and been in around where cars have fallen in and thought they were moving across the top of a car, but it was actually a catfish.
Well, I can tell you, when I was growing up, when they were doing this in the river, it was the Poca River near where I grew up, and I remember seeing a flatbed truck. In the back of that flatbed truck, there were fish in there. There were huge catfish in there. Those catfish were bigger than me at the time. So those things had to be at least 4.5 to 5 foot long. So I don't doubt for 1 second that's not a thing. I mean, I'm sure of it, actually.
Well, if you've ever seen the Chevron monsters, they're definitely out there.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at the red-tailed catfish. There's a great example.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You want to talk about something that should never be sold? Red-tailed catfish. Thank you very much.
Yeah, because they sell red-tailed catfish and they're, 4 inches long.
They're beautiful.
In the first year, they're over 1.5 feet.
They get over 6 feet long.
There's a catfish in India that supposedly swallows little children whole.
I could see that.
That is the oh gosh, because the reason they get so big is because in the Indian culture they will take their dead and set them on fire and let them float out into the Ganges.
It's good food,
and then the body will sink. Right, the raft will sink and it becomes food for these large fish. They're called the goonch. I know I remember it. The goonch catfish. I didn't even have to look that one up. Fish brain. Yeah, the goonch. The monster, absolute monster. Like its mouth is wide enough to fit my shoulders through. So I mean, you get my shoulders through, you got the rest of me.
Yeah, well, an adult red tail is about like that as well. I mean, they're monstrous fish, and I don't think people understand that. It's like they're thinking a little fish, even if it's 6 feet long, oh, it's just a 6 foot long fish. No, if it's 6 feet long, that means its mouth is like this,
3.5 feet wide.
Yeah. I mean, they're big, they're monsters. That's just what they are. But the Wells cat, same thing. And
Wells cats.
Oh yeah, whales get huge. Yeah.
Well, whales have been found in the freshwater tributaries of I believe Ohio at one point, if I remember correctly. There was a story about that.
Somehow they had got let loose. Somebody had imported one and chucked it loose. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So can these things, these big aquatic things, be out there? Yeah, they can. And to go back to that story, that Joe had dug up from 2019 or whenever it was, those guys, that description, they saw this thing crawling out onto a rock. That's just crazy. I mean, I don't know. That's very strange.
That river in a lot of places is it's littered with shoals.
Yeah.
And I think that's where these guys were seeing it. It had been swimming, had come to a shoal where it had to crawl its way to the next deeper stage of the river. And it was crawling upstream. It would have looked like a big rock at one point.
Yeah.
And then the rock's moving.
Yeah, that's the weird part,
Yeah.
So, I mean, wow, I don't know. But I first read that story. I'm reading their description. I'm thinking, wow, that almost sounds like a mermaid, the way that they're describing that.
That body it really form, did.
And that's probably what they were really more concerned with, trying to get that light on, if that's a mermaid, they were gonna. I know these guys. They're from West Virginia, man. Come on.
In the future, we should do a whole episode on giant animal lore.
Oh yeah, we definitely could.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Well, there were giant animals. I mean, I think that's a fact. And I do think that a lot of them were driven out during the expansion and modernization. I remember when I grew up, there were stories about giant snakes around where I lived. And, those were just disappearing. Those stories were disappearing, back then. And so they've been around for hundreds of years, probably. Just think about it. I mean, of course, there are these legends, and they're not all just people who made up stories. It's just like those guys. They saw something.
Yeah.
They saw something very real. It's just like the beast of Busco. There was something there. And the legend.
I was going to say, if you talk to a lot of older fishermen, all of them have a giant turtle story.
Oh, yeah. All of us have giant turtle stories. I got chased by a giant turtle, so it was terrifying.
What?
Go ahead and share that one. We got a few minutes left.
I was with my uncle, and we were fishing. He was a big cat fisherman, and he would catch state records. And he snagged this. Well, he didn't snag it. I'm lying to you. He wasn't trying to catch this thing. He had his fish on the stringer by the bank, and all of a sudden it started clanging. And he went over and he pulled this thing up, pulled the stringer up, see what was going on. And there's this head, and I kid you not, the head was that big around. And I jumped back, and he started. Well, it ate all his fish. It bent the stringer. It destroyed the thing. And he said a few expletives and said he was going to get him. So he did. He rigged up a treble hook. He rigged it up to some nylon cord, and he threw it into off the bank, and he caught this thing. And the size of this thing was ridiculous, and it broke free on the bank and chased me around. And if you've ever been chased by something, it's a monster, guys. This thing was huge.
I wish I could have been there to see that.
This was at least, 2.5, 3 foot giant snapping turtle hissing. I mean, you think a lychee hisses, nothing compared to this thing, and it was crazy. And he's like, "Oh,
And
try
the smell.
get it." He's trying to get me to get this thing, right? No, don't let it get away. I'm like, I don't care if it gets
I
away.
guess, Ron, you weren't turly enough for the turtle club.
No, man. I mean, and I'm
Ron
not
was
one
just
of
running
those.
away so his giant snapping turtle didn't steal his butthole.
I am not playing with the giant snapping turtle. That's all I'm going to say. And second of all, I'm not a fan of killing things like
Yeah.
that, and that kind of irked me too. So, but
Yeah,
he always did. He's an old timer. They were the old timers. He's not around anymore, but he was an old timer, and those guys, they did that, man. They went out
They
and, I'll say this for them: if they killed it, they ate it.
Yeah.
They ate it, and they
Mhm.
used everything that they could off of it. He did that. It's the same thing, But yeah, I remember that.
What you
That was
can't
a
eat,
pretty.
use it for fishing bait.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean
and
that's a fact.
we've been doing this stuff for a long time with the animals, and we've if you're not going to eat it, you don't kill it. Like that's how I
No,
was raised
Mhm.
too.
no,
And
that's
Yep.
no.
and I just when it comes to especially with reptiles and stuff, I can't. Like
No,
one of my favorite things to do in the forest is to roll up on a timber
no
rattler.
way.
And I know everybody else freaks out and they're like, "Oh God!" But I'm like, look at this guy, look at him."
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. So, we're the people who go out and try to rescue these things rather than try to harm them. And it always bothers me when I hear things like that. Now, if you're eating it, I don't really care. I'll be
Right.
honest with you, I don't care because when I was growing up as a kid, I've had turtle soup.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was little, thought it was good, but later on, consciously, I will never touch it again.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I've had shark before. I'll never eat it again. Because back in the day, grow up in the 70s, that stuff, who cares,
Right.
And then later on, you start to find out more about these animals and you start to really appreciate them and the ecology that surrounds them. And it's like, that's not, no. I mean,
You
that's
learn
not
about
going to happen.
overfishing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
even though I'm a hunter,
But
there's certain things that I won't eat.
you don't do
I'm
it for sport. You don't do it for
right.
sport.
I do it to pack a freezer and feed the family.
Yep.
And but there's still certain things that I won't kill to eat.
Right.
Or I won't, and like you said, like on principle, like I won't eat shark.
No.
Nope. Just because I know how they're harvested.
Exactly.
And it's not ethically harvested at all.
This one was, but still, and that was again back in the 70s.
Right. Yeah. If you're catching them off the beach and you're eating something, but like a lot of the times when you're ordering it, like if you go to a restaurant, you see it on the menu.
Oh no, absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
No.
But it's one of those things where ethically, I kind of do draw a line on certain things.
It's kind of like octopus. I won't eat octopus. They're just too smart.
They're too smart.
That's kind of one of the reasons why I hope we never find Sasquatch, because you don't want to be guys out there trophy hunting.
Well, true.
Absolutely.
You're right.
There's how many people out there already have these artificial like mounts that they've had made.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And yeah, they're neat, they're novelty and whatnot, but they exist because there's a real demand for it. If these things were actually discovered and people could get on their location easily, that they would hunt them and somebody would have one on a wall stuffed somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fact, and I am not. I would not condone that in any way. I think that would be almost like killing another human. To be honest with you, I don't think that's. This is not something of a sport.
No,
and I don't see you eating one. And if you did, man, there's something wrong with you. That's what I'm going to say about that. So that's almost borderline cannibalistic at that point. And who knows what that would do?
Chimp or a gorilla either.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Who knows what that would do? I mean,
Yes, not only the ethical problems, but the bacteria and diseases it would
get. The diseases is what I'm getting at.
That's right. I'm like, I'm good.
How did the great zombie outbreak start? Well, let me tell you.
Brandon barbecued a chimpanzee.
Well, they were shooting Bigfoots, and someone decided, why waste all that good meat? So they had a barbecue.
That's 800 pounds of good meat. Don't waste that.
Yeah. And pretty soon everybody was sprouting fur and groaning and, and that was the end of humanity. So,
oh guys, this has been a fun episode.
I'd say that's probably 2024.
That's gonna be the bingo card for
this rate.
2024.
Yeah, zombie Bigfoot is going to be 2024.
There we go.
That's the one.
We should make an actual bingo card.
You know, we should do that. We could sell that on the table.
We've already, I'm sure someone's already won.
Probably.
Yeah.
Have like a graphic for one on the show, and then mark it off every time we predicted something correct.
Yeah,
I think we should do that. The top 10 predictions that how they used to do the New Year's predictions for the famous psychics in like the Inquirer. This blah and blah says, this is going to happen, and then at the end of the year they'd be like, oh, they got this one right. I think we're batting about 100% at this point.
Well, guys, those of you who are listening to us, do you have any episode suggestions? We've got several great episodes lined up for you, but we will always make room for listener comments and listener suggestions.
We will pivot and turn and divert our course of action to accommodate you, the listening audience,
particularly for the live shows.
Those are more for the live show.
Yeah, we definitely want some comments and some topics that you want us to cover in the future. So go ahead and send those in. We'll add them into the lineup, and you never know. Sometimes they might show up sooner than later. If you've got comments about anything, you can always send them over to wildandweirdwv.com. If you're wanting to report a sighting, if you've seen some gigantic turtle yourself and you've had or seen an out of place animal of any kind that was unusually large for that
giant owls, that's a big thing.
Yeah, giant owls. I mean, there's an Owlman episode coming up. So, I mean, if you've had a giant owl sighting, send it in. We will read it off on the show. Yeah. You can send those over to wildandweirdwv.com. Go to the report a sighting tab and send that in that way. If you want to help support the show, we've got some stuff we're going to be adding back into our Etsy. We promise we're going to get that thing up and going for you guys. We got some stuff we just got to load in, and that'll be going then. If you want to jump over there, it's at wildandweirdwv.com. Click on the shops tab. It'll take you over there. And then Ron's actually made some new shirts.
Oh, yeah. We do have some new shirts that are made for World Contact Day, which will be coming up soon, if it hasn't already happened.
Right. If the real one hasn't already happened.
It hasn't already happened. Yeah. March 15th is World. Yeah. March 15th is actually, was World Contact Day. So that's when it was supposed to be
February
in 2023. I mean, it may have already happened at this point. We don't know. So we're just kind of batting around. The ancient concept of World Contact Day, there we go, would be March 15th. So, yeah, we have some stuff for that.
The early 1900s concept of, or late 1900s concept.
The pre-contact days of contact.
I used to joke that if a UFO actually show up in America, we'd shoot it down. And
well,
that was a good joke.
That aged poorly. Oh man, guys, thanks for joining us. Yeah. This has been a fun episode. We've had some laughs, we've had some jokes. This is a good lighthearted kind of episode I think we needed, especially as heavy as the live show is going to be this week, as well as heavy as some of the past month has been on these episodes. Everything's been really serious recently.
Yeah, it has been.
You guys haven't got to hear us really laugh and had a good time for a while, and hopefully it helps you guys laugh and have a good time. And
feel free to laugh at us. We don't care.
Right. So again, before we go, head on over to YouTube, listen to that episode that we're going to be putting up live this week. It'll be effective tomorrow or yesterday. You'll be able to go and listen to the UFO news release. If you want to find us elsewhere, you can find Brandon at Horror Brandon on Twitter. Yes, the Twitters. I'm at Wild and Weird Joe. You can find our YouTube channel at youtube.com at Wild and Weird WV. You can find me on Instagram at Skinwalker Sculpts and TikTok, Joe Purdue. Ron is the Mothman Artist over on TikTok with underscores between the words, and Lanham Ron over on Instagram. And if you want to get in touch with us about anything there, you can find us at all of those different social media sites, whichever one suits your fancy. Reach out to us there. Send us videos. Send us contact info. Anything you want. If you want to jump on the show, let us know. We've got the ability to bring you on in real time, baby. Anytime can be wild and weird radio time.
Anytime. Literally.
Absolutely right.
Just
I
beam
would
you aboard.
love to talk to a witness. Please come on the show.
Yeah, we we have been asking
Mm-mm.
witnesses to come on this show now for.
I think they're afraid we're going to ask them hard questions.
Maybe.
Possibly.
It's possible.
I'm not going to ask you hard
We
questions.
only had one so far, right? Just the
One
canal-
question?
Well, no,
the
we've had
Canal State
guests
Forest
who
guy.
were witnesses, but we've never actually had just a witness come on the show, tell their story, and leave.
Well, we've never actually had that ability until now either, so let's be fair.
Right, true. It's much easier now.
Yeah, it's a lot easier now, so we can actually pop you on here, either on audio or video, and
So-
join the show. Come on in. Let
You
us know.
guys can jump on anytime now. So
Yeah, you don't got to show your face. We can just use your voice.
yeah.
And if you really just want to play with people, I can pixelate your face and make you look important.
And we can go back and post and edit your voice with a
modulate
modulator.
the voice. Yeah, sure, I can do
We
that.
can
Right,
go
like on an old
full-blown
episode of Sightings.
Unsolved
from back
Mysteries.
in
Yeah, like
day.
the old episodes of Sightings and Unsolved Mysteries. Right, exactly. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's kind of do that kind of stuff. Do that.
Mhm.
Well, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. This has been fun. Again, get a hold of us if you've had a sighting. We've already told you how to do that. And remember, the kappa is going to try to steal your butthole. So just fart in its general direction, and you should be safe. But not
Believe
too
me,
close.
I'll have no try.
Stay wild and weird, everybody.
I don't know what's wrong with you all.